Hello, this is Janet Bloom, and this video demonstration is to talk about quoting sources as well as citing sources. Now, of course, we all know when we go and get information from a website or a book or even an interview, we need to make sure we give credit for those ideas or those words when we include them as part of our report. And there are various ways of doing that. If we're going to take somebody's direct quotation, their word-for-word information, sometimes called verbatim, then we need to show the reader that we're taking their words directly by putting the information into a quotation. So if the quotation is 3 to 4 lines long, we can treat it as part of the paragraph simply by surrounding the word-for-word text in quotation marks. So that shows the reader that we are quoting someone else. Now, if we're quoting someone else and we decide maybe we don't want to use the entire quotation, we want to omit some of the text. When we omit text in the middle of a quotation, it is important to show that we've omitted the text by putting the ellipses, which are a series of periods followed by spaces. So it's a space, period, space, period, space, period, space. So these ellipses indicate to the reader that there is information that has been omitted, and that's quite important. If the ellipses appear at the end of a sentence, then we would need that fourth period to close out the sentence. Now, if the quotation mark is longer than 3 or 4 lines, rather than treating it as part of the paragraph with those quotation marks, we actually like to set it apart as a brand new paragraph. So let me go down and maybe perhaps split up a paragraph here just so we have some information that is longer than 3 or 4 lines. Let's assume that this was a quotation. Rather than putting it in quotation marks, because it's longer than 3 or 4 lines, we're going to set it apart by going to the Page Layout tab and changing the left indent to 1/2 inch and the right indent to 1/2 inch. And you can see that brings in the text from both the left side and the right side. So we're not changing the margin, we're just changing the indent. And that sets apart that quotation from the other paragraphs. Some authors do like to have that in 1 inch rather than 1/2 inch. Sometimes it's only the left side, not the right. But you'll notice we don't use quotation marks when we set apart that quotation as a separate paragraph. Some authors will even change the line spacing to single, although to be quite honest, it doesn't make a huge difference because when we change that line spacing to single from 1.08, it's very difficult to see that difference. So that would be fine. For our purpose, if we come across a quotation, we would simply type it as is with the quotation marks. Or if it asks specifically for you to format as a long quotation, then you're going to set it apart as a separate paragraph and indent both the left and the right sides by 1/2 inch by clicking on the Page Layout tab and changing the left and right indent measurements to 1/2 inch. We don't have to worry about the single spacing. Now, when we use those quotations, we do want to make sure that we cite those sources so that the reader could perhaps go and look up what was omitted, or perhaps they want more information about who actually quoted this work. And so we put in an in-text note, or what's called a citation. So we position the insertion point wherever that information is going to be located, and we click on the References tab and we choose Insert Citation. Now, the first time we insert a citation, we will need to put in all of the information about the source. So we'll click on Add New Source. And you can see this Create Source dialog box. I'm just going to move it up here by dragging, that title bar, will allow you to change what type of source we're working with. You can see by clicking the type of source drop-down arrow all of the different sources that are available. I'm going to assume this is from a journal article, so I'll click on Journal Article, and then I'll type in the information, whatever information I can find. So the more, the better. Now you can see as I'm typing in, there is an example area that shows you how to type in the information so that you know, in this particular case for the author, you're going to type the surname, comma, space, followed by the first name, and then if there's an initial, put in the initial. If there was more than one author, you type in a semicolon, a space, and then begin the process again with the surname. So always look down at that example area as you're typing in your information for your source. You can use the Tab key to move to each field, or you could certainly point and click. Now, it's important that you double check that you've proofread carefully, that you've got everything typed the way that it should. A source, like anything, is only good if it's accurate. So you do want to make sure you proofread carefully, check your capital letters, check your punctuation, and so on. Now, if you come across a field that you don't see in the window here, so for example, on some websites, there's extra information that you want to put in. There are actually extra fields available, but you only see them when you check off this box for Show All Bibliography Fields. So you can see that expands the dialog box to include a number of fields that are available. And again, you want to fill in as many as you can. The ones with the asterisk are the ones that they kind of recommend that you fill out, but it's not mandatory that you fill those out. Once you're done typing in as much as you can about your source, proofreading carefully, then click on OK. Now, a couple things happen. First of all, a source, or a citation I should say, will be inserted at the position of the insertion point. Another thing that happens is if we wanted to use that source again, if we were to position our insertion point and we were to use that source again, when we click on Insert Citation, this time you'll notice that source is already listed. So we can simply click on it. We don't need to select it again. Now, depending on what style of report you're using, whether it's APA or MLA style or Chicago style, all styles that you'll learn in communications class, you won't learn that in this class other than to switch the style. We can switch the style by, again, clicking on the References tab and under Style, selecting what style we want to use. Each style dictates how a citation and eventually how the bibliography appears. So you can see right now it was on MLA style when we started. And now if we switch to APA style, watch the citation change to include additional information. So the style will dictate how that citation appears. So you need to make sure you read the instructions to see is it MLA style, APA style, or one of the other styles. We'll usually stick with MLA or APA in this course. Other than that, you don't need to know about what each style is doing other than how to change that style. So the process of going through and adding all of your sources is as easy as positioning your insertion point, clicking where you want that citation to appear, going under References, Insert Citation, and choosing Add New Source. Now, if you notice that there's an error and you want to edit a source, we can do that in one of two ways. One way would be to click on one of the existing citations, and you can see when you do that, it comes up as a field code. Clicking the drop-down arrow beside the field code and choosing Edit Source. That will open up the Edit Source dialog box, which is really the same dialog box that you started with. You could then make the desired changes and then click on OK. Another way to change a source, if you don't want to go through your report to find a citation that matches, is to click under References and choose Manage Sources. That opens up the Source Manager and you can see the sources that are used appear under the current list. Click on the desired source and choose Edit, and that will again open up the Edit Source dialog box where you can make the adjustment. Now, another thing that you might want to do is you may want to edit this particular citation. So not necessarily edit the source to correct a typing error or to add information, but just edit this one and only citation. So let's say this quotation came from a page that was quite interesting and you think the reader might want to flip to that page of that book directly. When we click the drop-down arrow beside the citation and choose Edit Citation, so not edit source, we're not editing the source, we're editing this one and only citation. When we click on Edit Citation, we get a little dialog box where we can actually put in the page number. And when we put in the page number appears as part of that citation. So an avid reader could go and look directly at that page. Another thing you might want to do in that Edit Citation is actually remove the author's name, because let's say at some point it said, as Kaplan suggested in her article. So perhaps the sentence begins with the author's name. We don't need the author's name as part of the source. We can actually edit this citation to suppress the author's name. And suppress just means don't show it. It's not going to delete it from the source. It will just suppress it for this one and only citation. So when we do that, you can see that the author's last name is replaced with other information. Now, it is important to use these citations not only for quoted works, but also for paraphrased works. So, sometimes you go to the internet, you copy and paste a paragraph, you plop it in your report, you change some words so that it's not exactly what you saw on the internet. Well, you still need to give credit for that idea. So while it may not be set up as a quotation in quotation marks or set apart as a separate paragraph, you still need to give credit. So position your insertion point by that paraphrased works. Again, go under Insert Citation, add that new source or use an existing source, and then you've got that source where you want it to appear. To delete a citation, simply click on the citation, click on the 3 dots to the left of the field code, and press the delete key. Note that deleting a citation doesn't delete the source. If we click on References, Manage Sources, you can see that that source still exists under the master list, and because we've used it in our document, it also appears under the current list. So deleting a citation just deletes that one citation. If we wanted to delete a source because maybe we found out that it wasn't a very valid source after all and we didn't want to use it again, we can only delete the source from the master list if it's not being used in our current document. So we would need to go to our current document, find out where else we're using it as a citation, delete that citation, and then come back here under Source Manager to click on the source and delete it. And that concludes the demonstration on quoting sources and inserting citations.